You're listening to the Cat Breeder Sensei Says podcast, the show that supports the reputable breeding of pedigree cats. This is your show host, April Catito, and in this episode, we're going to learn how to tell when your female cat is pregnant. But first, a disclaimer. The information that you hear in this episode is based on personal experience or personal knowledge. You may certainly have a different experience than the one that's going to be explained in this episode. Okay, so let's go over some of the things that you can look for when you're trying to figure out if your queen is actually pregnant. So the more experience that you have with this, of course, the easier it's going to become for you to know when to check your queen and know the things to look for, the signs, and to actually be able to confirm these things on your own with confirmation. You just are going to be sure that she's pregnant. But in the beginning, it's really hard to tell. I mean, you want her to be pregnant, but you're not sure, and maybe that looks like a sign, and maybe it doesn't, and it's just a little nerve-wracking. I just remember my first couple of queens trying to research, and even trying to find pregnancy tests for cats. Yes, I was looking for them, and I actually found a couple of places that had pregnancy tests for cats, and then I discovered you could also go to your vet and get blood tests done, and they check for certain hormone levels in the blood to determine whether or not the cat is pregnant. But they can't do that until they're a certain length of time into their gestation, usually about 3 weeks. So with that being said, any of the home pregnancy tests for cats that you see, which by the way are not easily accessible in the United States. So some of the ones that I saw were in another country, and they were a blood test and maybe done by veterinarians and stuff. So there's just no readily available pregnancy test for a cat to take a urine sample like they do in humans and be able to have a positive or a negative reading. So that's kind of out of the question. If you're looking for that, save yourself some time and some frustration looking for that, because it's just not really available for us. So there are some things though that you can look for to tell if your female cat is pregnant. So here's some of the things that you may experience, and some of them you may not experience at all, and we'll kind of go through that too. So for the first couple of weeks of a pregnancy in a cat, there's no signs, there's no symptoms, there's really no signals at all that can tell us whether or not she is pregnant. It takes a couple of weeks before the hormones start to change in the cat and her body starts to change as well. So until those things start to happen, we really are just sitting and being patient and waiting for the time to pass. That's really what has to happen, is the right amount of time has to pass before you can tell whether or not your queen is pregnant. So what you want to do is always document the date of the mating with the male. So if you put your female in with your male on, let's say, March the 15th, and you saw that they did have a confirmed mating on March 15th, then that's the date that you're going to use to start counting the pregnancy. And the average gestation period of a female cat is about 65 to 67 days, or about 9 weeks. So the way you can kind of remember that is, for a human, it's 9 months, and for a cat, it's 9 weeks. So if you document the day that the mating actually took place and you start counting from there, here are the things that you want to start looking for. Around day 18, you'll see a change in your queen's nipples. So around day 18, sometimes it takes up to around day 21. So the hormones will change in her body and cause a change in her nipples, especially in maiden queens. This is usually when you can see the biggest change if it's her first time being pregnant. The nipples start out usually white or very, very, very light pink, close to the skin color of the cat. And as the pregnancy progresses into close to the third week, they will get bigger, so the nipples will swell up, and they'll also turn a very hot pink or a very rosy pink color, so darker than they were before, and it's pretty undeniable to see the change in color in the nipples. So you may start to see some gradual change of color, and you start to question like, I don't know, is this the pink that we're talking about here, or does it need to be darker? And then you may be out there at day 18, 19, 20, checking on her and say, okay, this is definitely a change. This is rosy pink. And sometimes it's even so dark that, it's almost a pinkish purple color. So I actually have a photograph of a queen's nipples that you can look at on the podcast episode on the website catbreedersensei.com. Just go to episode 12 and you'll be able to see that. Another symptom is morning sickness. So just like with humans, the hormone changes causes nausea and just causes the female to throw up. And it's usually in the morning. So ironically, they have morning sickness. Now this takes place about the third to fourth week, and it should only happen a couple of times. So if you see the vomit from the cat, it's perfectly normal. Don't be alarmed. It just kind of give that validation as, okay, she's pregnant, because there she is throwing up. Bless her heart. She has morning sickness. But after a few days, that should subside. So she should not continue to vomit after a few days of her pregnant, once she throws up for the first time. So if she does continue to throw up, you definitely want to take her in and have the vet examine her and make sure that she is okay. Now, if you're a good record keeper, and you'll want to be keeping track of her heat cycles as well. That will kind of give you a pattern for her and tell you how regular she is. So some cats are very regular and they have their heat cycles, every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, especially in the spring and summertime. And then some are more sporadic and they may have one heat cycle here and one heat cycle there. But if you're documenting these and keeping track of how long she is in her cycle, etc., then you may be able to predict when she is expected to have another one. Now, that's not always going to work. She just may not be regular that month or that particular time in her life. But typically speaking, they're pretty regular. And during the spring and warm weather and enough light, they should go into heat about every 3 weeks. So if your female is pregnant, then of course she is going to miss that would normally be a heat cycle. She's not going to have it because she is pregnant. You'll also see increased affectionate behavior. So it may look similar to her being in heat. So if you notice that they become a little more loving and they want some pets and some rubs and may rub up on your legs and rub their face on the wall. She may also do that if she's pregnant around the 4th or 5th week. She just may become more affectionate towards you. So that's something to look out for. So when you have all these signals, you can start kind of putting all of these things together and say, okay, she missed her heat cycle, her nipples are pink, and she's awfully affectionate, and she threw up. She must be pregnant, right? You won't actually be able to see a roundness in her belly until about the 5th or 6th week. And again, that will depend on how many kittens she actually is carrying and her body type and the size of her kittens. So many factors, to be able to start seeing her showing. If she has only one, she has a little singleton, it may never appear to you like she is pregnant. In fact, I had a female that only had one kitten, and I took her to have a sonogram just to make sure she was pregnant because she had all of the other signs, but she wasn't showing. And she ended up with a singleton. So depending on the number of kittens that she has, she'll start showing. Her little belly will start getting round, and you'll be able to feel a difference in her body and say, oh yeah, I feel her stomach is swollen and she is looking different and her sides are poking out a little bit. So that's usually around the 5th week. Now, sometimes you can see it around the 4th week if you're really keen on how, she looks and how she feels in your hands. And when you pick her up, then you might be able to feel a difference just in that around week 4. You may be able to feel the fetuses in your queen's abdomen if you gently press on her. That's the palpation of her abdomen around the 25th day of pregnancy. I don't like to do that because I'm afraid it's going to cause harm to the kitten, so I just don't like to push around on her stomach. But if you're comfortable doing that and you maybe speak to your vet and have them show you how to do it, you can also do palpation of your cat's abdomen and see if you can feel the fetuses in there. Now, sometime around the 3rd week of gestation, the heartbeats can be detected. So if you really want validation, you can go to the vet and take your female and have them do an ultrasound. So at this point in the pregnancy, it's too early to do an x-ray. That is something that you can do later, around 45 days into the pregnancy. But if you're wanting to get a confirmation early, then an ultrasound can be done and you can hear heartbeats and even see the kittens in their individual sacs. Depending on where they're located inside the uterine horns, you might be able to get a count of the number of kittens, but sometimes there's one that might be hiding behind another one, and you won't be able to get an accurate reading, but you can at least get a confirmation if the cat is pregnant. So I know, a lot of people in the beginning especially are just really impatient, and they want to know if their queen is pregnant, so they'll go have an ultrasound done just to see. Your queen will start to gain weight if she is pregnant. So if you keep track of her weight, then you want to weigh her before you mate her, and then weigh her again about 3 weeks or 4 weeks after her mating date and see if she's gained any weight. The average pregnancy, she'll gain about 2 to 4 pounds depending on her litter size. So she'll start to gain weight after about week 3. So as you can see from some of these indicators, nothing really can be told about your pregnant cat until the 3rd week of gestation or around day 21. That's really when things start to happen and her body really starts to change, and you can just make a confirmation visually and say, all right, this queen is pregnant, and you can set her estimated due date about 65 to 67 days from the date that she mated with the boy. One point I want to make about the pinking up of the nipples, that's what it's called when the nipples actually swell up and they turn hot pink, is that not all cats will experience this. So if you have a cat and their nipples are not changing color and you still see the flesh colored, or it's just baby pink or barely, that doesn't mean that she's not pregnant. It's just not one of the traits that she's going to get. There's also something else you can feel like around her breast. If you start to feel like veins that are poking up that weren't normally there, the veins start to enlarge and they get bigger because they're preparing to, provide the milk for the kittens. So you can feel the veins. I like to check the lower teats. They seem to, be a little bigger, a little larger, and easier to detect when those veins just start to enlarge a little bit. The last bullet point that we have here to indicate that your queen may be pregnant is that she will have an increased appetite. She has to have extra calories and extra energy because now she is eating not only for herself, but several of her kittens. So make sure little mama has plenty to eat and that she is not running out of food because she's going to be hungry. I mentioned this just a few minutes ago, but around day 45, you can take your queen and have an x-ray done. An x-ray can count the actual number of kittens that she is carrying, and really the only reason to do this is to know what to expect when she's delivering. So if she's really big or she's really small, an x-ray may help you feel better about knowing that she's delivered all of her kittens. But it's certainly not necessary to take your queen in and have an x-ray done. If she's done well throughout her pregnancy and everything seems normal and it seems fine, then I don't see a reason to expose her to an x-ray or the radiation just to do a kitten count. So, I wouldn't make that like a habit or a regular part of your routine in your cattery of x-raying your moms just to get kitten count. When she's delivering her kittens, when she gets toward the end, you can feel when there are still kittens left in there. So, getting an x-ray to know how many may be something that's just unnecessary. So there you have it. You have several indicators that can help you determine whether or not your queen is pregnant and if she's going to have a litter of kittens. Once the magic happens with the boy, then the magic will start to happen again around the 3rd week of her gestation, where she'll start showing those physical symptoms to you, and you'll be able to see that and validate it for yourself. I hope this was helpful. I know it's very exciting to wait for your queen to be confirmed as being pregnant and know that you have little babies on the way. They're going to be here soon. So just be patient, and the mom will definitely give you the signs and let you know that she is with babies. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Cat Breeder Sensei Says. I'm going to ask you to do me a huge favor right now and subscribe to the podcast on the platform that you listen to us on, and leave a review for us. A positive review will help. It'll help get the word out that we're out here doing the podcast for new breeders and aspiring breeders, and helping to support the community of pedigree cat breeders. So there's nothing else available out there for this community. So please help us get the word out and spread the positivity, and let's be the change that our cats need. I'll see you next time. You guys take care. Bye-bye.